Hello, everyone, and welcome back to ICU. September is IC Awareness Month, so I thought we would kick off the month with a special episode that is for the loved ones of people with interstitial cystitis. So, to my regular listeners, this will probably be an episode you're going to want to save and send to your loved ones so that you can help them help you. Because a common thing I hear from people with IC, people that I work with, people that I just know through the community, is that the people in your life don't understand IC. And the truth is, no one's going to understand what it's like to live with IC unless they themselves live with it or have experienced a similar bladder condition. So I thought this episode could serve as a resource for people who are maybe married to someone with IC. Maybe you're the child of someone with IC, a parent, a friend, any type of relationship. You could be a coworker. It doesn't matter. If you care about someone and you want to help them, that's amazing. I love that. And I love that you're here listening. So in this episode, I'm going to give you a little background on what IC is. I'll explain why your support matters. I'll give you 10 ways that you can support your loved one with IC and a couple things to avoid saying or doing. This episode may feel different than what you are reading on the internet or seeing in support groups, and I think that's a really good thing. Something that I strive to inspire in my listeners is hope. There's not a whole lot of hope on the internet when it comes to IC. There are doctors out there that will tell you, you have to learn to live with this, or I'm sorry, this is all we can do, best of luck. And it can get kind of dark sometimes. So I just want you to know that no matter what anyone tells you, relief from IC is possible. And if you want to read success stories, I will drop a link to some in the show notes. But you can use me as an example. I suffered from bladder symptoms my whole life. So I'm 30 now, and as far back as I can remember, I had really bad bladder pain. It hurt every single time I went pee. Nobody knew what was wrong with me, so I kind of just kept it to myself, and I suffered in silence growing up. I got diagnosed at 18, tried all the different treatments out there. If you're a loved one, you're going to see probably your loved one with IC try all of these different treatments or some of them. And unfortunately, none of these things helped me personally, but I am now symptom-free, and that's because I found and addressed my root cause, which was a dysregulated nervous system. So basically, I was stuck in fight or flight for the majority of my life, and that caused a bunch of other problems. So a tight pelvic floor dysfunction, gut issues. I have IBS, slow gastric emptying. I've struggled with fatigue at times. Other things people can struggle with could be autoimmune conditions, chronic migraines, poor immune function, things like that. So, everybody with IC is really different. We all have some similarities, but there is no cookie cutter approach, and that can be really frustrating as somebody with IC. So, kind of to give you the gist of who I am, because you're probably thinking, well, why should I listen to you? Why should I keep listening to this episode? Well, first, your loved one probably sent this to you, so that should be enough. But I am not only an IC warrior, I am a registered dietitian specializing in bladder health, so specifically IC and overactive bladder. I have served this community for about 5 years now. I've helped over 200 people in my Road to Remission program get relief from their symptoms and get their lives back. I share a ton of free content from this podcast to my social media accounts. Have a whole lot of free resources out there for you. I also serve as the vice chair on the board of directors of the Interstitial Cystitis Association. So, yeah, those are my credentials. Let's get into what is interstitial cystitis, because it's probably a term you have never heard before. IC is a chronic bladder condition that presents usually with symptoms that could be urinary frequency, so having to pee a lot, urgency, so that means having the urge to pee, feeling like you have to pee all the time. It could include bladder pain, so that could be like a burning pain, it could be a dull, achy pain, it could be pain that is worse before you urinate, but urinating makes you feel relief, or it could be switched and your pain gets worse when you urinate and just kind of like stays like that. So everyone's a little bit different. Also could include like pelvic pain, pressure. I've heard a whole host of symptoms from people, but those are the most common. You don't have to have all of them, but a lot of people do. IC is a pretty invisible illness, so that means you probably won't be able to tell that someone is struggling just by looking at them. Okay, I remember I looked perfectly normal. All my friends thought that I was fine growing up, and I was in so much pain all the time, but I sucked it up. I didn't know there was an alternative. So, when I started this business, my friends were like, we didn't realize how bad this was for you. So you really don't know what a typical day for someone with IC is going to look like. So you really can't judge someone based on how they look. So the diagnostic process, it can be a difficult process for some people, and it can be lengthy. I see as a diagnosis of exclusion, which means before someone diagnoses you, so that usually is like a urologist, a urogynecologist, somebody that specializes in bladder health. Before they diagnose you, they should be running tests and doing exams and ruling out any possible explanation for your bladder symptoms. So possible explanations could include pelvic floor dysfunction, estrogen atrophy, certain vaginal infections. There's, the standard urine cultures aren't picking up as much as we thought they were. So there are UTIs, urinary tract infections, that are going undetected. So sometimes people need a more sensitive testing method. So these are just a couple examples of things that doctors should be looking for. And also, this isn't just a woman's condition. This also affects men as well. So I just wanted to say that the men in the IC community are, they're a smaller group, they're a subset, but they still, you guys matter. You guys also struggle. So I don't want to forget anybody. So there are flare-ups. So somebody could have like their day-to-day baseline symptoms. So let's say that's like a constant ache in their bladder. Maybe it's like a 4 out of 10. It's bad, but it's not horrible. They have some frequency, but let's say the next day it ramps up to like an 8 out of 10 and their frequency gets much worse. That is something that we call a flare up. So that's a flare up of your symptoms. So if your loved one ever says, I'm in a flare right now, or my symptoms are flaring up, that means that it's worse than it normally is. Something happened, whether they've identified that or not, that has triggered their symptoms to worsen. Now, the thing about flares is they typically go away. There are a small subgroup of people who symptoms are just like really bad all the time, but they typically do go away. So flares can last different periods of time for everybody. For me, it used to be a couple hours. For some people, it's a couple days. Some people get stuck in flares for weeks, and that can be exhausting. So just know that it's different for everyone, and you know, it really just depends on the person and what triggered their symptoms. So talking about triggers, what can trigger a flare-up of your bladder? The number one trigger among my clients and myself is stress. So if your loved one is a highly stressed person, or they're just like really stressed at baseline and they've just adapted to deal with that, and that's like the normal, that is a big trigger for people. Anybody who's highly anxious, you know, I get a lot of clients with perfectionism, type A personalities, people like that. And stress is a really big trigger because essentially your body is going into this fight or flight response. Your nervous system thinks there is a threat, and there's a lot of different changes that occur in your body so that you can either fight this threat or flee from it. So an example of that is your digestion will slow when you're in fight or flight because you don't need to digest if you're trying to fight or run away from something. So this happens with the bladder also, and an increase in symptoms is really normal for people with IC who experience stress. So that could be just like your typical baseline stress that just builds up, or it can be like a stressful day. Maybe you have a fight with a friend. Maybe you talk to your mom and they were super annoying and you're like really clenching your pelvic floor. Maybe you have a project at work that you're just feeling a lot of pressure to finish or have it, you know, put together as best of a project as you can. Could be some like an acute type of stress. So that is usually the trigger, at least among my clients among my clients with IC. Also, people with IC, I don't know the exact statistic, but a large majority of people with IC also have pelvic floor dysfunction. So that means that the muscles in your pelvic floor, those are the muscles that are kind of like a hammock to support your organs, like your bladder, your bowel, in females, oh my God, why am I blanking on this? Your uterus, there we go. To make sure that stuff doesn't fall out, because if not, it could just fall right out. So your pelvic floor is really important, and both men and women have one. And you need this to function properly so that you can pee, poop, have sex, hold your urine if you need to. So it serves a really big role, and a lot of people with an IC diagnosis also have dysfunction of these muscles. So especially if you're somebody with high anxiety, high levels of stress, I can speak for myself. I hold my tension in my pelvic floor. Some people hold it in their shoulders, some people in their neck, wherever that may be. But for me and for my clients, it's usually in your pelvic floor, and it's hard to notice that. So that's something that can trigger the symptoms. Certain foods and beverages can trigger people's symptoms. Now, I want to be clear, because I am an IC dietitian, I need to set the record straight. Your loved one might have gotten a handout, or they might have been prescribed a diet called the IC diet. This is not meant to be a forever diet, okay? This diet is supposed to guide an elimination diet to help them determine what their unique triggers are, if they have any. And not everybody is diet sensitive. The majority of people I work with are not. It's really their nervous system or their pelvic floor or their hormones. But if someone has diet sensitivity, okay, let's identify what that is so we're not avoiding all of these different foods and beverages. Because this list, it says to not drink alcohol, don't drink coffee, don't eat chocolate, spicy foods, tomatoes, tomato products, citrus. Like, think of all the things that have those ingredients in them. Soy, things like that. Like, it's just incredibly restrictive. So it was designed to help you or your loved one figure out if they are diet sensitive, and if they are, what specific items are they sensitive to? It might only be a handful of things. Okay, so we want to focus on what they can have versus restriction. And when somebody follows the IC diet for too long or is too strict about it, it can be dangerous. You run the risk of developing nutrient deficiencies. You run the risk of losing weight unintentionally. A lot of people that I work with and talk to in the community, they develop a fear of these foods. Their brain starts to view those foods as unsafe or dangerous or a threat, and that puts their body in that chronic stress cycle. That actually triggers that fight or flight response in their brain. So I really want you to know that, and I want your loved one to know that the IC diet is not meant to be a forever thing. Now that I got that out of the way, sure, they can at first or during a flare-up have sensitivity to certain foods or beverages. Like, for example, if someone's in a flare-up, I wouldn't suggest drinking like 2 cocktails or having 2 cups of coffee in the morning. Like, it's very situational, but when your bladder lining is irritated, consuming certain foods that your bladder is sensitive to, that I discussed, that can be like throwing fuel on the fire. So they may need to temporarily limit those items, especially during a flare-up. But if somebody has diet sensitivity, that does not mean that it is going to last forever. I've helped a lot of people overcome diet sensitivity, and if you want to learn more about that, go listen to episode 97 of this podcast. All right. Sorry, I'm taking a drink of my coconut water. What else do I want to say here? More triggers besides what I've already mentioned. Hormones can trigger a flare-up. So maybe if someone's flares are cyclical, they're happening at the same time every month, that could be a sign of a hormone issue. If they have pain or their symptoms increase, like when they are urinating and they're at like the perimenopause, menopausal area, that could be an estrogen issue. They may just need like a topical estrogen. I mean, people with IC can still get UTIs, so actual bladder infections. So, and I think I failed to mention earlier, like IC it presents the same as a urinary tract infection. The symptoms are virtually the same. The only difference is the urinalysis will come back negative. It will say you do not have an infection. Okay, so that is the main difference there. But people with IC can still get UTIs, and that can flare up their symptoms as well. So those are some of the main triggers. I would say off the top of my head, some other smaller things would be wearing tight clothes. So maybe like skinny jeans or leggings could put too much pressure on the pelvic floor. Really intense exercise sometimes bothers people. Having penetrative sex can bother people. So those are a couple of things to look out for in terms of triggers. So I think next I want to talk about why your support matters. You wanting to learn more about your loved one's condition says so much about you. You love your person, whoever you're listening to this episode for. Okay? You want them to feel better. You don't like seeing them suffer. And that's amazing. You're already one step ahead of the game. So your support matters because that's going to lower the stress in your loved one. It's going to help their nervous system feel safer. Okay? A regulated nervous system can reduce urgency, pain, and the spiral that makes flares feel more amplified. And the small actions, we notice them. Okay? You like doing your own research, we notice that. You trying to buy something that's like IC friendly, like a food or a meal, like you putting in that effort, it goes a long way. So these small actions compound and they mean a lot. Okay, so let's get into 10 ways that you can support someone with IC. So these are actual action steps that you can take. And I want to give a quick disclosure. I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm not like, I already told you guys about my credentials. These are just tips that I've come up with after living with bladder issues for 25 plus years. Everyone is different. So take each of these tips with a grain of salt and always, always, always consult with a medical doctor if you have any questions about medications, treatments, anything like that. Okay? So tip number 1, believe them. Okay? I could talk about this forever, but a lot of people with IC we've experienced at least one time in our life where somebody thinks we're making up our symptoms, or someone thinks we're being dramatic. Like it could be a doctor, it could be a friend, it could, I don't know, it could be literally anybody, but that makes us feel invalidated, and that's a really crappy feeling. So believing them, I mean, that I feel like that is just like the basic decent thing to do. I don't know why you wouldn't believe somebody that you love. They're not looking for attention, they are suffering, and even if you can't see that, it can still happen because again, this is an invisible illness. So your validation will reduce the stress your loved one feels and any sort of shame that might come up. Okay, so you could say something like, I believe you. Your pain is real. I am on your side. I am on your team. Okay, let's figure this out. So another thing that you could do is when your loved one shares a symptom with you or something they're struggling with, pause, make some eye contact, reflect back on what you heard, and then respond. Okay, you don't have to immediately go into like fix it mode. Okay, so that is the first thing. Number 2 is learn the basics. So you're already doing that by listening to this episode, but you can continue your journey of learning more, gaining knowledge about this condition, what options are possible. Okay, I have over 100 episodes for you, just waiting for you to learn how someone can get relief from their symptoms. We interview doctors, PTs, so there's a lot of knowledge you can learn here. And then there's other resources out there. Like I said, I'm the vice chair of the ICA. They have a ton, I guess I'll say we have a ton of information. We have a ton of like articles and resources for you. So that's ichthelp.org. You can check them out. Really great. They're a nonprofit. But yeah, I mean, being informed, it helps your loved one feel supported. It helps them feel like you care. And being informed can help prevent you from saying unhelpful things. And I know it's not your intention to be unhelpful, but sometimes if you're suggesting something that just isn't a viable option or doesn't make sense, it can be frustrating for the person. So you could say, I want to understand what you go through. Is there a resource I can read? Or is there a podcast I can listen to? Is there a website I can check out? So I would definitely check out the resources that I mentioned here, and your effort shows that you care. Okay. Number 3, ask before you go into fix it mode. Okay, I know as humans it is so normal to want to fix something, to find a solution, to help the person right away. But the thing is, this type of advice can feel like pressure. Sometimes people just want to vent. Sometimes they just want to marinate in their negative feelings, have a pity party, and that's okay. So I would suggest asking them what they need. Do you need to vent right now? Do you just want me to listen? Do you want me to suggest possible solutions? Do you want me to go research this? So I think those could be a couple more helpful actions that you could take. But the first step would probably be ask them what they need. I think that would be good. Number 4, you could plan bathrooms and oh my gosh, sorry, I'm like all over the place. Plan around bathrooms and help out if they need bathroom breaks. Okay. Sometimes just knowing there is a bathroom around and that the people you're with don't care if you need to use the restroom multiple times, that will decrease our stress and anxiety, and that will actually decrease our need to use the bathroom. The more we hyperfixate on it, the more we're worried about what other people think of us, the more stressed we're going to be, and we're going to throw ourselves into that fight or flight state, and that will trigger our symptoms to be worse. Okay, so the more you can make your loved one feel comfortable using the bathroom, help them out, don't make a fuss if they need to use the bathroom a couple times on a road trip, that would be really helpful. And you could even go a step further and help them find the nearest bathroom or walk with them to the bathroom. Just try to make them as comfortable as possible, because the less stress, the less symptoms. Okay? Next is number 5. Support food choices without policing. So this one can be tough, because I already gave you my spiel on the IC diet, but sometimes people do need to follow the IC diet for a period of time, and this can be pretty restrictive. This can be emotional for people. So imagine if someone told you that you could no longer eat pizza again, or have your favorite latte at a coffee shop, or have beers with your friends. Like, imagine how that would make you feel. And just try to be as empathetic as possible and support them, because they might be experiencing food fear, and any sort of like policing or judgment can make it worse. So, you could help with, if you live together, you could help with the planning. You could go to the grocery store together. You could just collaborate. You can plan things out together. And if you don't live with the person and maybe you're going to a social event, like, just be ready to support them. Be ready to help them find a food option that works for them. Or maybe if they want to bring their own food, don't give them shit for it. Okay? It's not a good feeling. I can vouch for them on that one. So, and if you're at like a family gathering, like let's say you're at a holiday, Thanksgiving or something like that, and they're not eating everything and people are questioning them, like, oh, why aren't you eating that? Back them up. Be like, I have a medical condition. I'm working through some food stuff right now, so I am just sticking to what I know I can have. Something of that nature. Or like, it's literally none of your business. I think you can say that in a nice way. Just, your family and your friends best, so just maybe do a little bit of practice ahead of time if that makes them feel better. But we just want them to feel comfortable, not stressed, not worried about what other people think. Okay, number 6. It could be helpful for you to create a flare plan. So this will help your loved one not panic as much when symptoms arise. So if you have a plan in place, that could be helpful. That could be, you could feel like you have the tools that you need. I talk a lot about different things you can do to get relief on this podcast, but I'll kind of mention a couple of things here. So, like I said, a flare is an increase in symptoms. This isn't going to last forever, but they're going to need to try to get relief in the short term, because these flares can be really brutal. They can make you bedridden. You have to bail on plans. You have to call out of work. It can really take over. So it's going to take some trial and error to figure out what actually helps your loved one with their symptoms. I can give you some examples of what works for me. So my flares are usually triggered by stress and my pelvic floor. So I will first drink about 8 ounces of water because I know that my bladder is happier when it's hydrated, um, when my urine is less acidic, and that's what hydrating can help you do. So I usually recommend everybody drink some water when you're feeling a flare come on. I suggest doing some deep breathing. That is really, really helpful. That tells your nervous system that you are safe. I love 4-7-8 breathing. There's a lot of different breathing techniques that you could try that could be helpful. Some people might need to take medications. They might have these as needed medications from their doctors, so they may need to take those. There's a medication called AZO, that's over the counter. A lot of people like to take that when they're flaring up. It's not meant to be like a long-term medication, but it could be helpful. Trying to think what else. Some people like to put heat on their abdomen or their pelvic floor during a flare. Personally, I used to do ice on my pelvic floors or just something cold. Like I would sit with a water bottle between my legs, and that felt soothing for me. So it's going to be different for everyone. Like I said, you're going to need to, or they're going to need to do some trial and error, but with time, they'll figure it out and they'll have all of these tools in their toolbox to deal with flares when they happen so that there isn't such a strong stress response. And I would say if you want to get them a gift, if there's any like special event coming up, like you need a Christmas gift, birthday gift, just want to say, hey, I love you, you could pack up a little like care package of like a heating pack, a pair of comfy sweatpants, maybe a pack of Azo, maybe a water bottle, like a cute little reusable water bottle, something like that. That would be a really, really cute gift. Okay, I think we're at number 7. So this is on the topic of intimacy. If you're like a parent or a kid or a coworker, if you're anybody but like a partner, I'll skip ahead like a minute. Okay, probably not going to want to listen to this one. Okay, so intimacy is probably going to change for a little bit. And it doesn't mean that's going to be forever. It just means that sex and any sort of penetration can be painful for people with IC. It can increase their symptoms. Okay, so, you may need to change up what you're doing in your sex life. You may need to stop for a bit. Okay, they may need a little break from intimacy. And I know that is really hard for you. I can totally validate that. But again, this is not going to be forever. And this doesn't mean that they don't love you or find you attractive. It just means that they're going through their own shit right now. And sex can trigger them to be in pain or them to have symptoms after you're done. So I'm sure you don't want that to happen to them. So I would really suggest focusing on connection. Maybe you could still snuggle up on the couch. Maybe you could have some deeper conversations, play some games. You could just like focus on some non-sexual intimacy, and just like being present with one another can be really meaningful. Okay, I know that one's hard, but try your best. Number 8, moving on. Sleep is a big deal for people with bladder issues. A lot of people are going to struggle with having to pee in the middle of the night a couple of times, and this can really mess with you. This can make you grumpy. This can put a lot of pressure on someone to get good sleep because they know they're not going to feel their greatest if they don't. So I would suggest keep evenings as simple as you can. Both of you, I would suggest try to avoid being on your phones or any type of screen like the hour before you go to bed and the hour after you wake up in the morning. You want to start off with a really slow morning so that the nervous system is soothed and feels safe. And yeah, I would say just do your best to, like if you're sleeping in bed with someone who's getting up to go to the restroom a lot, try not to make a fuss of it. I know that you need your own sleep too. So if it is creating issues for you with your sleep, then you guys may need to come up with a plan. Maybe you need to sleep separately for a bit. Maybe you need some other solution. So just try to be supportive with that, try to be understanding, but if it becomes an issue for both of you, then have a conversation. 9 is share the load. So I'm just going to say it. A lot of people with IC are women. I mean, that's a fact. And a lot of the women that I work with, I'll just speak to their experience. They're moms. They are, leading the household. They're taking their kids to school. They're taking them to activities. I'm not by any means saying that the dads don't do this, but this is just the experience of the people that I'm working with. And they're cooking dinner for everybody, and they're doing a lot. So try to maybe take some stuff off of their plate. Maybe, offer to take one of their tasks and do that for a period of time. Be like, maybe I'll cook dinner some of the days this week, or, can I drop the kids off? This is going to look really different for everyone. It's hard for me to give examples, but just trying to take some stuff off of their plate, because fewer tasks will equal less stress, which will equal less symptoms. Okay. So maybe say, hey, what 2 things can I take off of your plate this week? Maybe that means grabbing the groceries or driving them to an appointment, supporting them. Something like that could be really, really helpful. And number 10, balance empathy with encouragement. So everybody needs space to feel their feelings. I always say this, like, it's so normal to throw a pity party after you get diagnosed with IC. I'm not going to tell anybody to not do that, to understand from day one that relief is possible. Like, everybody goes through this grieving process almost, because this is a big change, and that's okay. Let them throw a pity party for a short period of time, but this is going to look different for everybody. But there's going to be a point where you're going to have to pull them out of that. Okay? Or you may not. They might pull themselves out of it, but just be there for them. Be what they need. And if you feel like it's getting out of hand and they're going down a dark mental health rabbit hole, step in, have conversations, open it up. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out, okay, how can we proceed? How can I help you? Okay? So let's say someone's throwing a pity party, they're having a bad day, totally cool. You can say, hey, I get it. It's okay to feel this way. Your feelings are valid. I'm here to support you. When you're ready, I will help you get back up and pull yourself out of this. So that could mean just sitting with them in a hard moment. That could mean suggesting a small activity, like going for a short walk, watching their favorite TV show, or planning something fun. Okay? So, again, a little bit of a pity party, totally natural, but there comes a point, and this will look different for everyone, but either they need to pull themselves out of it, or you need to help them pull themselves out of it, because relief is possible. I can't say that enough. This doesn't have to be what their life looks like for the rest of their life. Okay? I know it can feel that way, but that's not the truth. Okay, and I have a bonus one that I just threw in here because I feel like this could potentially help somebody. There's a lot of support groups out there, so virtual ones, Facebook support groups. There's a Reddit thread for IC. These platforms can be helpful, but they can also be kind of gloomy and doomy and negative and worst case scenario. So if your loved one, like you're seeing them scrolling a lot, you're seeing them on these pages a lot, and their mental health seems like it's being affected in not a good way, have a gentle conversation with them. Be like, hey, I noticed you seem to be on these support groups a lot. I've also noticed that you seem to be feeling kind of hopeless right now, or maybe don't put words in their mouth, but maybe be like, it seems to be affecting you in a not positive way. You know, do you think that, or do you agree, or do you think that maybe giving these groups a break for a little bit would be helpful? Like, kind of like pose it like that. That could be helpful, because I've seen a lot of people just like go down these dark rabbit holes, and it's tough to get out of them. Okay. So those are my tips. I'm just going to do a rapid fire of things not to do, and then we'll wrap this up. So first, do not minimize. Don't say it could be worse. There's nothing more annoying than like someone saying, oh, it could be worse. You could have cancer. It's like, okay, that's not helpful at all. So don't do that. Don't compare them to another person you know with this condition or somebody on the internet. Everybody with IC is different. Not everything will work for everybody. Do not pressure them to try something that you saw on social media or on the internet. Like if you see this like fad diet that worked for somebody, don't be like, you should try this diet. Okay? Or don't like pressure them to do it. You could present the information to them, but don't pressure them. Don't sneak trigger foods or drinks. This one sounds kind of bad, but I've heard stories of people's, let's say a spouse or something, like not believing that they have diet sensitivity, and then like using an ingredient that bothers them just like as an experiment to see if it actually bothers them. So it's kind of like sneaky in that way. Don't do that. That's not me. That's not nice. Don't ask them why they need to go to the bathroom again, or don't be like, oh, you're going again? You just went. That type of comment is not helpful, and it makes us feel really self-conscious. Do not turn every conversation into symptoms only. We really don't want to hyperfixate on that. Do not force toxic positivity. Okay, we don't, I mean, I know that you care, I know that you want to help, but you know, you can do this, you'll get better, blah, blah, blah. That like over and over again can become overwhelming, and it can feel almost invalidating of the suffering that they're going through. So try to like listen, ask them what they need from you, and then just let them know that they're there, or that you're there. Okay. So those are my tips. Again, take those all with a grain of salt. Everyone's situation's different. Apply them how you feel is necessary. If you're looking for more resources, I will drop them in the show notes. But I hope this episode was helpful for you. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on social media. I'd say my preference is Instagram, or you can send me an email at callie@callieknutrition.com. But yeah, thanks for being here, and thanks for caring about your loved one.